Hello and welcome to an all-new episode of Anime Brain Freeze. We are your demonic hosts.
I am John.
And I'm CC, and when there's just too much cool anime to watch, we got you covered. Just when John and I got out of the light novel hole, it's pulling us right back in. Because on this episode, I will kick things off by talking about isekai fantasy online novel series turned light novel series turned manga series turned anime. That time I got reincarnated as a slime. Then John will talk about the third season, well, the whole series probably, because
in broad strokes.
Yeah, I mean, we haven't talked about it yet, so broad overview, just as broad as the one for Index in the previous episodes.
Hopefully a little easier to follow because it's not as dense.
All right, yeah, okay. So yeah, of the science fiction, science fantasy, action, harem, dating, whatever other genre you want to stuff in there, show Date Alive. And finally, I will wrap things up by talking about the inaugural season of the Promised Neverland, the highly anticipated new hit series adapted right from the pages of Shonen Jump magazine. If all of that sounds like a good time, stick around, we'll be right back. So I guess I didn't even need to do the whole light novel whole bit in the intro and just could have set the title of the first series on the docket tonight. Because that time I got reincarnated as a slime is one of the most light novel-ass isekai garbage titles I've ever heard in my life. And for people new to this show or anime in general, let's do a quick refresher on what isekai usually refers to. Which is a person from our normal real world whisked away to an alternate universe that can be basically anything from a classic fantasy world to a weird sci-fi thing or a video games related or themed universe. Sometimes these characters stay themselves, sometimes they get turned into something else, but usually it's trying to put a character with a life experience that is very familiar to the standard anime watching fan into a fish out of water situation. Sometimes this is used to make the main character the ultimate badass who can bend that world, which is often styled after their favorite hobby, to his or her, mostly his, to be honest, will, like in Overlord or Sword Art Online, for example. Sometimes that trope gets turned on its head, with the odds being stacked against the main character and them having to overcome those odds, be it to great comedic effect, like in Konosuba, or to deliver surprising drama, like in Grimgar or Fantasy and Ash and ReZero, a series I still want to check out, by the way. And sometimes to create the ultimate edgelord fantasy wank, like in Rise of the Shield Hero. Believe me, its time will come, but not today.
Better watch it. That opinion might be a little too much for some people to handle.
Yeah, apparently it is, but boy, do I not give a fuck! Anyway, so yeah, currently isekai is an incredibly popular genre in light novels, in manga, and in anime. Maybe the most popular one, period. Next season alone, we're getting 4 new isekai-themed shows, which is ridiculous.
I mean, I saw someone on Twitter going on the other day that light novels have kind of started to move on from that, but, you know, the anime adaptations are still sort of in the thick of it, so who knows what the next big trend is going to be.
Yeah.
Because, I mean, for a while before isekai, it was like the Battle Academy type thing, and those were, God, there were so many of those.
And they all sucked. Well, not all of them.
Yeah, not all, but most of them were. It was very samey after a while.
Yeah, well, the same counts for the isekai stuff, I guess. You know, sometimes you get good stuff like Escaflowne. I mean, that's not light novel based, if I'm not mistaken, and that's earlier isekai stuff back when that was still like mostly ladies transported to fantasy realms with a lot of hot boys. I think Fushigi Yugi is another one of those. But yeah, sometimes you get good stuff like that, or Konosuba. Sometimes middling but somewhat interesting stuff like Overlord and Sword Art Online, which is, you know, some good, some bad. But often complete wish fulfillment hyper garbage like Knights and Magic, Gate or Master of Ragnarok, which seems one of the worst ones, if the public response is to be believed. But yes, so understandably, I was kind of skeptical going into that time I got reincarnated as a slime, which, by the way, I'm just going to call slime time from now on because I don't have the time. But I thought, hey, at least this seems to be an kind of unusual setup for the main character. So color me surprised when I realized this is one of the most comfy, well-told, good vibes, entertaining show I've seen in quite a while that also has some surprising emotional depth to it. So the story of Slime Time starts with our main character, Satoru Mikami, who is just a normal, chill dude working at a general contracting firm. I think he's like, I don't know, I forgot his age, somewhere in his 30s, I think, or late 20s. Making good money, like living comfortable life, everything. He has no girlfriend, but other than that, he's pretty happy. And at the beginning of the show, he states that he's actually not minding that at all. So he's enjoying his peaceful life. All that changes when he saves one of his acquaintances from a knife attack in the streets and dies, which is a very standard setup for isekai stories, I guess. I mean, Konosuma made fun of stuff like that pretty effectively. And there's not really a reason given why there is a guy running with a knife through the streets that just randomly tries to attack people. Maybe that happens in Japan, I don't know. But yeah, it's just that is never elaborated on. He's just a guy on a rampage, I guess. But yeah, things get very weird when he arrives in the afterlife, or something that would be the afterlife, I guess. The mysterious voice that heeds his dying words and basically transfers his consciousness to this new world, new universe, new fantasy world, whatever. So that voice, which is later coined like the Great Sage or something by Satoru, heeds his dying words and misinterprets them as a checklist for RPG character features and tropes for his reincarnated body. So Satoru gets reincarnated in foreign fantasy world, almost impervious among many other skills, but in the body of a slime, because that body is kind of like the most, that can house the most features that he, according to the Great Sage, yearned for, which he really didn't. He was just like in pain and trying to, I don't know, to end his misery and was wishing for the pain to end. But that's how these things go. He wakes up as a lowly slime, the lowest monster that would appear in a classic JRPG like Dragon Quest, for example. But ever the optimist, Satoru decides to make the best out of his new life situation. Among other things, he adapts to his new body, finds new allies and friends, founds his own village, and tries his darndest to turn this new world into a true utopia. So, as mentioned before, Slime Time is an online novel series that ran from 2013 to 2016 and was written by an author named Fuse. Got turned into a light novel series in 2014, which is still running with 14 volumes published so far. It got 2 manga adaptations in 2015 and 2016 that are both still running with 11 and 5 volumes respectively. And then we got this anime series in fall 2018 with 24 episodes, I think. I'd have to look that up now. The series is produced by 8-Bit, who also did, among other things, Aquarian Evil, Infinite Stratos, Tokyo Ravens, the aforementioned Knights and Magic, and a bunch of other shows. So, in terms of animation, their stuff can go either way. Like, say what you will about Knights and Magic, horrible show, horribly forgettable show. But it looked mostly decent, if I'm not mistaken. Especially
Infinite Stratus was Jesus, it was a thing too. Oh boy, that was just hyper wish fulfillment of a series if ever I've seen one.
Well, that fits the paper then, I guess.
At least Tokyo Ravens was fun for the most part.
Yeah, but that's where the animation quality comes in, because, like I said, Knights of Magic was decent. Same for Aquarian Evil, if I'm not mistaken. Tokyo Ravens, not so much. I remember that production to be pretty shoddy looking at times. A lot of off-model shots and some very wonky animation here and there. I don't know how it was handled in Infinite Stratos, the whole animation aspect of it.
I mean, it looked good. It just, the story that they had to execute on was complete trash.
Yeah. Anyway, I'd probably compare them to JC's staff a bit in terms of output. Some good stuff in there, but also some wonky-ass shit, so toss a coin, I guess. For Slime Time, the coin landed on the good side, because it's mostly a really good-looking show. It's pretty cartoony. The main character, who goes by the name of Rimuru after being reincarnated, by the way, is of course like very cartoony by nature because he's a slime. He has like these very cartoony expressions. Sometimes he forms an exclamation mark out of his body on top of his head, like as a reaction. And sometimes, the swollen vein and stuff like that. Something like that you would see as a reaction in a thought bubble in a JRPG, like Tales of the Tales series or something like that. He does that stuff with his body sometimes. So that's pretty cartoony for an anime. And a lot of the monsters that are live in this world, like ogres and goblins and stuff like that, and dragons, and they can be very cartoony as well. It's kind of unusual, but it's a very interesting look. It has a very vivid color palette, lots of interesting scenery, fun character designs, very diverse, and like this kind of nice, loose, soft drawing style to it. That still sharp character designs, but the whole scenery around it has like this kind of comfy, soft feel to it, which I liked a lot. The action animation is good, even though there are not that many full-on non-stop action episodes, contrary to what the OP of the show might lead you to believe. But yeah, overall, I really like the look of this show. I think it's a good-looking show from beginning to end. Some more highlight episodes where the action is popping and everything, where they seem to be using a lot of the budget up all at once. But mostly an overall pretty high level of animation, in my opinion, and presentation. Yasuhito Kikuchi is the director. He directed Infinite Stratos, but also 2 episodes of the old JoJo's Bizarre Adventure OAV and Macross Frontier, so good stuff as well. Script and series composition is done by Kazuyuki Fudeyasu, who wrote scripts for Bento, the XTV series, Monster, and pretty much every season of JoJo's Bizarre Adventure. So capable people at the helm here, and it shows. This is a pretty tightly paced fantasy story. Especially the first half is really strong with a good steady climb and build up that finishes up with a big climactic battle. Lots of fun dialogue, lots of good comedic bits, lots of great characters that get introduced. We got we got actually like a couple of very heartfelt moments in there that really rang true, and I don't want to give away, but that surprised me with how well they were handled, which I didn't expect from this show. I had a feeling this was a pretty lighthearted affair and with a very comfy, positive mood, which it is, but it also has some more sad bits that are handled really well and hit the right emotional beats and don't fall flat. And yeah, I was surprised by that, and I really appreciated that. After the first half, I would say it flattens a bit and nothing really groundbreaking happens for the remainder of the first season. Basically, the second half or last third of season 1 feels like a setup for what's going to happen in season 2, which has already been announced for 2020. But yeah, I was never really bored. Lots of interesting developments, lots of character introductions, good world building. It's all in here. And yeah, I think this was a very well-paced, enjoyable show. Well, it's hard to pin down what kept me going with this show, because it's like, on the outside, it feels like this might be kind of a standard affair because, character with a normal human life dies, gets transferred to a fucking fantasy world, then gets a body that is basically, after a while, able to do pretty much fucking everything. Like, Rimuru is so fucking OP, it is ridiculous. It's like, his slime body, at the beginning, it's like, what can I even do with this body? And then he starts out in a cave, he can't see, he can't really hear, he can just feel things. And then he starts consuming stuff around him, like crystals. And then he starts to fight animals or other animals and monsters, and finds out he can absorb them and consume them. And he also makes a pact with a very powerful dragon who is adorable. Because it's like this really looming dragon that is apparently was trapped in this cave by a hero. Yeah, Rimuru comes across him and treats him like a normal, after being a bit surprised in the beginning, he treats him like a normal, person, and tries to befriend him, and that the fucking giant-ass magic dragon is kind of taken aback by that because he did not expect that. And actually, they become friends, and it's a really nice scene. It starts with the dragon being kind of tsundere about it. Like, what? Why would I be friends with the slime? But please stay here. I mean, please, I'm so lonely. It's really great. Yeah, and he and Rimuru become friends, and Rimuru helps him out by, trying to free him from his prison. He can't really because the shield is too strong. But what he does is he consumes Veldra, that's the name of the dragon, and keeps him basically in his body. Basically eating away from on the shield from the outside, while Veldra is fighting it from the inside. And I don't know exactly how that works, but apparently the inside of Rimuru's body is infinite. So, fantasy shit. Make of that what you will. So after that, Rimuru starts absorbing more and more monsters and gaining all their skills and becomes more and more powerful and more powerful. So on the basic surface, this feels like another isekai power fantasy. But the attitude of the show is kind of different. It all starts with Rimuru as a character because he's so sympathetic. He's such a likable, chill dude that only wants the best for everyone around him. He wants to make his subordinates happy, which he gains a lot of. He wants to make the world a better place. He wants to help people stop fighting. Like I said, he builds his own village. He basically builds a whole economy around him being able to absorb useful stuff and turn it into other useful stuff. There's so much to like about that specific character, and that is important if the show is so centered on this one single guy who's super powerful. And I think a lot of isekai shows have a problem with making their main characters sympathetic or likable after they're giving them this infinite power boost. I mean, we're going to talk about a show next time that has had its problems with that. Mm-hmm. So yeah. And, we talked about Knights and Magic before. That has a completely unlikable asshole. Rimuru is adorable and nice and a good person and, is funny and all of that and creative and doesn't gloat when it comes to his fucking powers. And, Eru is a fucking weird psychopath and annoying little shit stain. So and that can happen with a lot of isekai protagonists, and it doesn't happen here. And that's kind of one of the things that surprised me, is how much I like that main character. And yeah, that feeling of sympathy, of positivity, of optimism that Rimuru brings across oozes into the entire rest of the show. All of that, how the show develops, how the philosophy behind it, and how it's about bettering this world, making that world that Rimuru got transported to a better place, where all the different monster races start working together, all the humans start making alliances with the monsters, and Rimuru tries to do all of that and enable all of that, and it's very nice. It's it's a very nice feeling, just in general. That's how I would describe watching this show. Every episode I turned into the show, I knew at the end of it, I would feel better. It's I would describe it as the ultimate comfort food. Even when things get more harrowing in between, there are sad moments, there is this girl that Rimuru meets, Shizu. Well, there is some interesting backstory to her, which I don't want to give away, but she and Rimuru become friends, and then some dramatic stuff happens, and that's one of the emotional things that I mentioned before that felt really good and was really well executed. And all of that caught me by surprise. Even when those sad things happen, at the end, when you come out of it, it still manages to give you this feeling of positivity and a bright outlook on everything. And I don't know, I'm not used to that from isekai shows or from a lot of anime in general, I guess. I don't know. It's weird. It's this weird comfort food feeling without feeling too shallow. Just without feeling like fan service or pandering or whatever. It all feels like it rings true in one way or another. And I really like that about the show. The other good thing is the cast besides Rimuru. There are a lot of creative, weird monsters in this. So there are a lot of fun characters to look at. And they all of them have very distinct character designs and personalities. So it's fun to see Rimuru bounce off of these characters, because in the beginning he doesn't really want to take the lead, but because of the way he is now and because of his power, basically everyone he meets after a brief confrontation accepts him as as their leader. And so he starts to grow like this, I don't know, this household of apprentices, of servants, of friends, of a lot of allies. A lot of people are just drawn to him. And like I said, founds the village and it becomes bigger and bigger. He needs a while to grow into this role because he doesn't really know how to handle this world and everything. But he gets it after a while. And he really wants to make the best of it. And like I said, make this a better world. And it also felt really great. I also liked some of the JRPG mechanics in this world. One of them being that the names of the characters of the monsters, or just names in general in this series, are very important. Once a monster in this show is named by someone, it can basically level up. Like, names in this are basically your EXP, which is a very weird but interesting idea, or a form of that. Like, if a powerful monster or a powerful character, whatever, gives a lesser monster a name, it basically transfers some of their power to them and basically levels them up, which is a very interesting idea. I don't know if any JRPG has ever used something like that before in its system, but it feels very JRPG-ish.
Well, I mean, in a lot of MMOs, you have NMs, which are, depending on what your game you're playing, referred to as notorious or named monsters. And they're usually, much stronger variants of another monster sometimes. And other times they're just, big, badass, strong monsters that if you run across in the field and you're not sufficiently leveled or not in a party, they'll just smack your shit.
You're right. Xenoblade Chronicles had unique monsters with names as well, if I'm not mistaken.
That's true. It did. I mean, since I played so much FF14, that's what my mind goes to first. But yeah, Xenoblade does do a lot of that as well.
Yeah. And basically, they make kind of like a bit of a plot point out of this in this show. And also, it's one of the most important mechanics, because once Rimuru basically accepts his role as a leader and realizes how this kind of power works, because he got leveled up by Veldra, the dragon, when he first met them, because Veldra gave him the name Rimuru, and that's how he became much more powerful. And after he realizes that, he's like, oh, okay, if I name these guys who are very weak, like he meets a bunch of weak goblins who get harassed by dire wolves. And he's like, okay, if I name these guys, then they get more powerful probably. And that's what he does. And he makes a mistake of naming all of them one after another, and then basically wastes all of his magic and falls asleep for a while. He doesn't do that after that, at least not without being in safe haven. But yeah, that works like a charm. And the goblins all become very I don't know what the next level is. Hobgoblin maybe? I'm not sure. But yeah. All of them can level up several times. They level up after that on their own, I think. But once they have their names, they are actually able to level up together with Rimuru, I think, because he's kind of their, master shogun, whatever. When he gets powerful, they get more powerful as well. Yeah, and it's just an interesting mechanic of basically accumulating this legion of characters and servants and stuff like that, and sharing your power with them, and they become more powerful when you become more powerful. It's really cool stuff. In general, like I said, the character roster is fantastic. There's this weird dragon person. I forgot what the race is actually called in the show. Wyverns, maybe. I'm not sure. Or lizardmen. I think it's lizardmen. And he's like the son of the king of them in that region. And he's like the most adorable buffoon. He's constantly posing and stuff like that. And of course, he's, at least in the beginning, mostly a complete failure, but very sympathetic. He's trying his best, but he's misled by evil forces and stuff like that. His name is Gabiru, by the way. He's one of my favorite characters in this show. He's so funny. He's just a fun character, which I liked a lot. And one of Rimuru's lieutenants, Rigurd, which is this old-ass goblin guy he meets first. He's a real grandpa. And then he gets named by Rimuru and becomes this super buff, middle-aged guy with gray hair. But who is constantly flexing like Major Armstrong from Full Metal Alchemist. And, the show doesn't take itself too seriously, as you might have noticed, only when it needs to. And it has a very nice jovial sense of humor about it. Like, it's not too in your face, like being constantly slapstick, constantly out for the joke. But the jokes that are in there are mostly really funny. There's a lot of situational comedy in there, and a lot of Rimuru knows something from our world that makes as a good metaphor for something that happens here, and then they play on that and make fun of that and stuff. So yeah, it's good stuff. Like, it's in general, this series has a good sense of humor about it, and I really appreciated that as well. Yes, like I said, some very moving scenes. This thing with Shizu is probably the highlight in more aspects than one. But some of the antagonists could have been stereotypical bad guys, are more complex than you might think after a while, and that gets elaborated on and stuff like that, which I also really appreciated. Yeah, everyone is just so damn likable in this. I don't know how to else explain it. Like, pretty much every person that you come across, even when you think, oh, this is the new ultra bad guy, after a while, like, oh no, I like that. I like that person. I like that character a lot. Like, that's also already way into the series, but she appears in the OP, so I guess I'm not giving too much away. It's like this kinda a bit lowly-ass character, but not too icky or something. Demon lord character called Milim, and she like learns of Rimuru after he's gained a lot of power, and she like rushes over to try and challenge him to a fight, and he just beats her in the best way possible, even though she's 10 times stronger than him. And like, the show can be very creative in that regard too. Like, and she's one of the best characters. Like, she's super funny, because after she gets beaten by Rimuru, they kind of become best friends, or that's what she wants. She immediately calls him bestie from that moment on, and just hangs around with them, even though they've never met before. And it's like, sure, why not? But that also brings some trouble with it, because Mirim is super strong, and when someone is like, you know, trying to cause a ruckus in Rimuru's village, she like goes full force on them, because she doesn't give a fuck and just wants to protect her bestie, and he, you know, has to rein her in and everything. The cast in the show is fantastic. I think I have written down 3 or 4 times in my document, or in my show notes document, before I streamlined it. Gabriel is the best. Gabriel is the fucking best. I love Gabriel so much. Milim is amazing. I love Milim. Oh my god, she's great. So there you go. There's so many great characters in this, and it's worth watching the show for that alone. Like, the main character, Rimuru, is fantastic. He has like oh my god, I haven't even mentioned him yet. He has one of the bestest good boys in all of anime, who is Ranga, who is a giant-ass direwolf. And they first start out like, you know, Rimuru protects the goblins from the attack of the direwolves, and then as it ends up, because everyone becomes Rimuru's friend after a while, the direwolves start living with them together, and basically Ranga is his steed, I would say, because Rimuru always rides him. And he's always so happy, but sometimes gets a bit, I don't know, too energetic, and then starts wagging his tail. And the thing with strong direwolves is they create tornadoes when they do that, and then just Rimuru might just get blown away and tumbling down a fucking hill as a slime, and Ranga running after him, and I'm sitting off my couch howling with laughter. It's a really funny show with just a boatload of great characters. Another good example of the main character being sympathetic and kind of unusual is they kind of put an effort into displaying him as a good diplomat, because a lot of the more quiet episodes in the show concentrate on him making, like I said, alliances with other tribes, with cities, trying to get trade going and everything, and trying to basically make his village like an important instance and important pillar of power in this world. But not like Momonga from, or Ainz from Overlord, who's like basically just after a while conquering everything and being a giant asshole. But very cleverly, and not trying to take advantage of anyone, just trying to do fair trade and make fair deals and make like good alliances that make sense without putting his people in danger just for the sake of becoming more powerful and stuff like that. Like they defeat a major villain, like at the end of the first half of the season, and he gives the credit for that defeat to a different party, like to some characters who were actually like contracted to defeat that guy. And he does that to draw attention away from him and come across as less threatening, so that other tribes and cities and whatever are not too afraid of him, because, you know, he's still a monster, but that they are like, oh, okay, that guy played a part in this battle and he helped, apparently, because, you know, of course he says, it would be nice if you mention me helping and stuff like that to the party that he gives credit to. And then maybe some people will come to the village and start trading and stuff like that. So he's very clever about this. He's a very good diplomat. And I like that the series emphasizes that as well. It's not all about him being like the most imba, powerful super creature. It's also he's a very clever guy. And yeah, that was also cool. I like that a lot. After most of that has happened in the, let's say, first 2/3, we start like this new story arc where he goes to a city and tries to fulfill a promise he made to Shizu at some point. And we meet a whole new cast of characters, and they set some interesting things, but those don't get realized yet. And I imagine most of that will come into play in the second season. It's interesting, even though it feels like, okay, we had all this interesting stuff happen in the first half or first 2/3. And now this gets a bit, I don't know. I don't want to call it a flatline, but it's not so eventful because it feels mostly like set up. But there's still some good jokes in there. There's some, like I said, some of the new characters are interesting. And I'm really interested to see where it goes. Yeah, I don't know what else to say about this show. I don't want to give away like the main emotional moments. And aside from that, most of it comes down to what I described. Like Rimuru amassing a lot of power, amassing a lot of allies, and the show playing around with that giant-ass cast and having a lot of fun with it. And there's interesting stuff set up with Shizu, and there's some interesting stuff set up with some demon lords working in the shadows and stuff like that. That will definitely come into play later, I assume. But, you know, that hasn't happened yet. So I'm really interested to see where it goes. I liked pretty much everything about the series. I thought it's a very, like, even though the last third of the show is maybe a bit uneventful, I still consider this to be one of my favorite shows from last and this year. It always managed to put me in a good mood with its sympathetic cast, with its good-natured humor and optimistic attitude. It was just refreshing to see a show where the main character is just an all-around good guy. And even though there are some really sad things happening in the show, it has this very positive feel to it. I enjoyed it a whole lot. After Escaflowne, it's probably my favorite isekai thing now. And if you want to catch up to it before Season 2 airs in 2020, you can do that on Crunchyroll. I recommend it. It's good vibes all around, with an incredibly charming cast, and I think you'll have a good time.
So after all that, it is now my turn to talk a little bit about Data Life. What could Data Life possibly be about, you ask? Well, the series begins with a strange phenomenon called spatial quakes, devastating basically most of the Eurasian continent, resulting in about 150 million casualties, so we're off to a happy note. For the following 30 years after that, these smaller space quakes are kind of plaguing the world on an irregular basis. Fast forward to the present with our would-be hero, Shido Itsuka, a seemingly ordinary high school student who comes across a mysterious girl at ground zero of a spatial quake. And he learns from his adopted sister, Kotori, that this girl is a spirit from a different dimension, and these spirits are the real cause of the space quakes, and that occur when they manifest in the real world. Through all of this craziness, he also learns that Kotori is the commander of a battleship called the Fraxinus, which is crewed by the organization Ratatoskr. Ratatoskr, excuse me. And its parent company, Asgard Electronics, and is recruited to make use of his mysterious ability to seal the spirit's powers. How does he seal them? By making them fall in love with him.
Ah, there it is.
Yes, but there are other players at work in this, such as the Anti-Spirit Team, which is a special unit designed to suppress the threat of these spirits, mainly by force. And one of the members of the AST, as it's referred to, is one of Shido's classmates, Origami Tobiichi, and she's very aggressive on and off the battlefield. She is very straightforward with how she feels about Shido, which leads to some interesting situations. But yes, as Shido seals more and more of these spirits, it basically means he's formed his own nice little harem along the way.
Of course.
And that is the basic setup for the story of Data Live.
And apparently that was enough story for 3 seasons.
Yes, well, Data Live started as a light novel, authored by one Koshi Tachibana. The light novel started in March 2011 and is the 20th volume, just released about 3 months ago. The anime so far has covered about 12 volumes. And there's a game which is actually finally coming out next month in the West called Data Live Rio Reincarnated. So if you want to watch the show, if you want to read the novels, if you want to play the game, you have your choice of how you want to experience the story, which is pretty cool. I think I might as well start by talking about how this show shifted production from a studio called Production IMS. They were basically a whole bunch of former staff members of one of the branches of AIC, and they decided, hey, we want to make our own studio, and they did in 2013. And they did. We talked about Active Raid, which is one of the shows that they worked on, and a few other things like High School Fleet, Takunomi, which was a fun little slice of life show about getting drunk with friends.
Okay,
it was a cute little show. Actually, it was one of those short form shows. A very trashy show called The Testament of Sister New Devil. Jesus Christ, that name.
Wait, that sounds familiar.
It was trashy. It was very trashy.
Maybe that's why.
And they did the first 2 seasons of this show as well as the movie Mayuri Judgment, which I still haven't watched. I need to. But the movie isn't critical to understanding the story of the 3 seasons as far as I could tell from watching it. Unfortunately, October 2018 was the end of the line for Production IMS. They got liquidated and they no longer exist.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
that's a shame.
They went bankrupt super hard, which sucks because they did do good work. So who handled season 3, you might ask? Well, you said their name earlier. JC staff came in and saved the day.
Did they, though?
Well, Data Live 3 ran half concurrent, I guess, considering how long Index 3 was, half concurrent with Index 3. And I gotta say, it looked a lot better and a lot more consistent in the animation department. Because oh man, I've already hammered into the ground how I feel, or how I've felt about JC staff since the second half of Food Wars season 3. But this show, or this series, looked fine. Or this particular season, I guess I should say. They at least brought on the same director and writer, Keitaro Motonaga and Hideki Shirane, respectively. So, you at least had that much going for it, unlike, a certain other current JC staff show where they couldn't get back the original director.
Mm-hmm.
Still salty about that. But it was a lot of the same crew working on it as far as, directing, writing, same musician, Go Sakabe. So it had a lot of, the same foundation set for it. But the animation isn't as inconsistently terrible as Index 3 was. But there are some moments that aren't great. But those don't crop up as often as they did in Index 3. So I feel like it was less distracting and I was able to enjoy it a lot more than Index, which is good. That's good. It shows that, they cared a little bit. They cared more than not at all about this, at least. There's a little bit of pacing, especially... I guess I'll get to that in a little greater detail, because I guess the best place to start is from the beginning, like with all things. So the first season obviously starts with Shido discovering that he has this power to seal away the power of spirits. When he encounters this spirit, basically the anti-spirit team gives all the spirits code names, and the first one that appears is called Princess, and she's got this like flowing black and purple dress and this massive ass broadsword, because anime. But
hey, broadswords are cool.
They are.
I don't mind a good broadsword here and there.
It's this cool looking like white and blue broadsword with a golden hilt, and it sort of doubles as its own scabbard as well. It's weird.
Very nice.
But it's fine. Each spirit's weapon is also supposed to be like a different like angel. Princess's is called Sandal Phone. So if you want to dig through your mythology books, you can feel free to do that. But when Shido manages to bring Princess down off her pedestal, as it were, he gives her the name Toka. The significance of the name Toka is actually kind of funny, because the first episode of the show is actually called April 10th. In Japanese, that would be Shigatsu Toka. So there you go. It's sort of a simple name, but it makes sense. Call her what you call her on the day that you found her. But
sure.
But
if she doesn't mind it,
and she doesn't apparently. But that sort of sets the frame for everything that comes after it, because after Shido helps to calm Toka's powers, the next spirit they come across is codenamed Hermit, and she's this little girl with this long blue hair and wears this like hood, and she doesn't really talk much except through her hand puppet.
Oh boy, that trope.
Yeah, a little bit. The puppet is kind of manifests as a giant rabbit, and is called Zadkiel, and she becomes later on known as Yoshino, and she calls her puppet Yoshinon. It's cute. And she has trouble speaking when she doesn't have Yoshinon by her side, so it's just a very... You can tell that she has a lot of insecurities and whatnot, in helping to seal her powers, helps bring her out of her shell a bit, because hermit crab. But that makes for an interesting encounter as well. Probably the most interesting encounter of the first season is with Kurumi. Kurumi, who is also known as Nightmare, and she has this gun that can fire different kinds of bullets, and each bullet has different time control powers, including allowing the target it hits to move faster, slowing down the target.
So she's like the I don't know, the buff debuff mage or something.
Kind of, yeah, that sort of thing.
Okay.
Can slow time down, can stop time, can turn time back.
Yeah.
And like one of her eyes looks like a clock. You can see like the Roman numerals on it, so you can know which one is being activated. And her power manifests as the angel Zafkiel, which takes on a musket and flintlock pistol as its form. So that she just, I just want to stop time. Bam, shoot you with a bullet. I think we've seen about 6 or 7 different ones, and each bullet has its own name. So each of them has, it kind of ties in, each with its own mythology as well. That's a lot to dig through too. So
reminds me a bit of the summons in Final Fantasy Unlimited. I mean, there was always a different bullet combination from Kaze there.
Yeah, that's true. Except it's more of a single bullet type thing as opposed to a combination of.
Yeah.
But Kurumi ends up being probably one of the most ferocious of the encounters, mainly because she is very, I guess you could say her alignment is chaotic neutral, because she does what she wants, when she wants, how she wants. But
so does he have to fight all of them first, or are some of them just willingly coming over instantly because they see him and fall for him for some reason?
There is a reason why the show is called Date Alive, and it comes down to having to take the spirits on dates to win them over.
Okay.
So the game is a visual novel, right?
Mm-hmm.
And in visual novels, you have to make certain choices at certain junctures.
Of course.
The way this manifests in the actual story is the crew back on the Fraxinus supply him with the choices that, have the most likelihood of succeeding in the given situation that he's in. Some of these choices are actually fucking ridiculous. And some of them are, not so much. And everyone on the Fractionist has to weigh in with what they think the best choices are. So every date is like phone a friend on Who Wants to Be a Millionaire.
Why not?
But I mean, this can manifest in funny ways, especially in the third season. I don't want to go too deep into spoilers on the third season because it's pretty interesting to watch and see how things play out. But when Shido decides to take things into his own hands and says, yeah, you know what? I'm going to choose the most out there choice every time and see how this plays out.
Oh, boy.
But yes.
So wait, do things sometimes go incredibly, horribly wrong for him, and he has to, I don't know, fight them to stay alive, or like is this mostly played for comedy, or how do the dates mostly go the same way?
I mean, it is played for a little bit of comedy, but sometimes things don't always go as they should. They sort of show that later on, after having sealed some of the spirit's powers, Shido is able to manifest a piece of them as his own. He's able to use that to fight for himself a little bit, but not to the extent that the spirits themselves can fight on their own.
Mm-hmm.
So that becomes interesting later on too. There's an encounter with Kurumi later on where Toka gets taken hostage by DEM Industries, who are like another big player in this. They're basically they're sort of partnered with AST, kind of, in a weird sideways way, but they have their own aims as well. By the way, DEM stands for Deus Ex Machina. Huh? But Kurumi appears to help Shido out when he needs it. So she's kind of playing all sides.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't think she's meant to come across as inherently like good or bad. She's just doing what's best for her in pretty much any situation.
So how does the plot play out? I mean, like, one of the big parts is him dating these, spirits, I guess. Does that, like, all get played out in the first season and then we move on to something else? Or does he date a new spirit in every new season? Or what is the structure here?
In each season, there's a different set of spirits that appears, and that sort of goes along with Shido building his harem, and it all sort of coming to a head with DEM and AST and all these things. Like, as of the end of the third season, the story is not done. Like I said, there's another 8 volumes of light novel after that.
So how many spirits has he amassed at this point?
About 6, 7, 8 in that neighborhood. The second season has him dealing with the spirit Yamai, which is basically it's a 2-in-1 because it's 2 girls and 1 spirit. Yay!
Oh boy. I have twins.
Yeah,
something.
We've got Kaguya and Yuzuru, who are basically polar opposites of each other. Kaguya is very outspoken and brash, and just very outgoing and sometimes childish and immature. And her sister Yuzuru is much more grounded, but she speaks in a very distinctive and sort of almost robotic manner. If you're familiar a little bit with, say, if you played Star Wars Knights of the Old Republic, there's a character in there named HK-47. He's basically this no bullshit taking bounty hunter robot, and he would always start by declaring what kind of statement he was going to make before saying it. So something like, here's a good quote for you. Definition: love is making a shot to the knees of a target 120 kilometers away using an Aerotech sniper rifle with a tri-light scope. Love is knowing your target, putting them in your targeting reticule, and together achieving a singular purpose against statistically long odds. Mm-hmm. That sort of thing. And that's sort of how Yuzuru talks. It'll be, what kind of statement she's going to make, and then she'll make it very robotic-like, which I wonder if that was sort of a direct inspiration.
I think that's also kind of a fetish, like this slightly robot-y girl. I assumed they would like cater to certain specific preferences. I mean, every harem anime kind of does this, where it's like, hey, here's your selection of kind of not stereotypes or maybe archetypes that you have seen in other shows, like that are pretty popular among guys, and I would assume that Data Life has a wide selection of those as well, and apparently even more than right now, because you like you said, there's more stuff to come.
Yes, but yes, the Yamai sisters are an interesting case, and then after that is Miku. Miku is, her code name is Diva, which should probably line out for you what she's like. Mm-hmm. She's basically this, wants to make a big flowery show of everything. Her spirit, her angel Gabriel manifests in the form of an organ, which she can use to amplify her voice, and she's sings and dances and plays music. She's the idol girl. She's the idol girl. And she kind of comes.
Is she your favorite?
I don't know. I mean, honestly, all of the girls are appealing for one reason or another, and I think that everyone couldn't find a favorite in one of them. I sort of like them all for different reasons.
Do they something with them after the dating process is completed and they have quote unquote fallen in love with him, with the main character, or is it is it like, now these characters are not important anymore? Like, are they still part of the cast? I mean, don't they like have complaints when, what was it, Shido?
Yes. When
Shido starts dating other spirits or girls?
Of course. All right. And I mean, I feel like that they're not throwaway characters because they do have moments going forward after their initial introductions, and they show them sort of being able to put their differences aside to help tackle bigger threats at hand. So it just sort of becomes this larger ensemble cast, if you will.
Okay.
But
That's
yes,
interesting.
yes. After the encounter with Miku, that basically takes us through the end of the second season. The third season, I won't dive through too far because it's the latest one. It gets into spoilers because if you're interested in watching, I'll try and spare you all of that. But the third season opens with a new spirit named Natsumi, who takes on the appearance of a witch, basically riding around on a broom, and her power is basically all about deception. She can, when the AST comes to attack, she basically uses her powers to render them comedically ineffective, like turning some of them into slices of cake, turning their weapons into carrots, that sort of thing. But it's revealed pretty early on that her very adult big sister-like appearance is not what she really is. And when she thinks that Shido catches a glimpse of what she is, it sort of sends her flying off the deep end, and she poses this sort of little game to Shido. I've disguised myself as one of your friends. If you can't discover who I am, they'll all begin to disappear one by one.
Ooh, that seems mean.
Yes. So it sort of temporarily raises the stakes at the beginning of season 3, and it makes for an interesting situation where Shido he can't figure her out. He doesn't know how to handle it, and I feel like for like the first time in a long time in the story, he's really stumped, and it makes it a bit more. It does make it a bit more interesting, which I like. But moving forward from there, most of the rest of the third season is spoilers because some of it concerns a character who I mentioned previously, and it's actually a pretty cool part of that character's backstory. So y'all can discover that for yourselves. I feel like the story in the third season, it kept it going pretty good, and it was more Data Live. I have no reservations in saying this show is goofy and silly and dumb, but I think that's where its greatest strengths lie, because you have this cast and crew of characters. There's a whole lot of them, and I'd say it's pretty difficult to not find a favorite in the lot, because like I said, I kind of like them all for different reasons, because they all have their own interesting backstories and flaws, but I feel like they're all likable in their own ways.
It sounds like a good vibes show, pretty much like Slime Time was for me.
Because each story or each subsection of the story, I feel like, without giving too much away, has its own happy ending, sort of. Nice. So you get to sort of that wrapped up sort of nice at the end of each story in one way or another. I do have one glaring complaint about the third season, though. So this season goes through the 8th to the 12th volumes of the light novels, like I said, except the 12th and final episode of season 3 kind of tries to take an entire novel and cram it into one episode. And spoiler alert, it doesn't work. It's rushed, it's poorly paced. They kind of phone in the animation on that episode. Like, it's not great. Like, I really honestly feel like it should have been, here's the OVA episode that's on the Blu-ray after the fact. So that way, 'cause there have been other shows in the past that have been like, oh, we wrapped up the show in the second to last episode. Here's one more. Please don't do that. Please don't do that. Because if you can end on a good high note, I would honestly much rather that than you trying to cram in a whole bunch of plot into the next episode rather than maybe like, I don't know, 2 or 3 OVA episodes are part of the next season. And I don't know if Data Live 4 is going to be a thing yet. There hasn't been any announcement. But I wouldn't doubt if it's on the way because, like I said, they have 8 more volumes of material. I can't stress this enough.
Well, I mean, it's probably still popular, right? I mean, otherwise they wouldn't have made a 3rd season, so...
Oh, yeah, no, definitely. I mean, I really sort of wish Production IMS hadn't gone under because they sort of kept... They had more consistent quality than JC staff, but, you know... I'm sick and tired of hammering that nail home too, but you know it's just going to keep coming up. You know,
the horse is dead. It's dead. Let it rest.
And I want to apologize to all of our listeners about that, but every time there's a show that I'm interested in watching and I see JC Staff's name attached to it, that's just going to keep coming up unless they can actually, you know, magic their way back to being good again like they used to, because you know I used to make dumb jokes and meme about them in the past, but you know the truth of the matter is they used to do good work. I don't know, there really must have been some shakeup in the management or something, because I don't know, man. Whatever. I mean,
they still deliver really good stuff from time to time, not necessarily like all on animation wise, but just as a series. Planet With was a show from them as well, and I really loved that show. I mean, there was also, you know, animation-wise, it was alright, but nothing stellar, but it at least was pretty much pretty consistent. But that doesn't seem to be the norm anymore, no. I guess. And, you know, One Punch Man Season 2, we'll get to that, but yeah, I don't know what happened.
I feel like with One Punch Man, without going too much, it's been like alternating on and off between episodes.
Yeah, it's very... The fluctuation is very high on that show in terms of quality.
But yeah, I mean, I feel like the Season 3 still... It looked fine for what it was for, you know... It looked passable for the most part. A friend of mine, or a Twitter friend of mine... when we were watching it, I feel like she and I agreed that, you know, they were at least able to keep the character designs on model for the show's run. So it had that much going for it. But, you know, the final episode of Season 3 notwithstanding, it was still good. I enjoyed it. So if you were looking forward to the next chapter in the Data Live saga, it's here. You can watch it. But, you know, like I said, you can also experience it through the novels. As of this recording, the game is coming out next month, so you can do that as well. But it's a fun show. I feel like it's definitely, you know, it's enjoyable for all of its dumb goofiness. And if you feel so inclined to watch it, all 3 seasons of it are on Crunchyroll and Funimation, so you can very easily check out the series in its entirety on both of those services.
Emma and her friends Ray and Norman are the 3 smartest kids at the small orphanage Grace Fields house, isolated and protected from the outside world. They and the other orphans spend their happy days studying, eating, and playing, awaiting their eventual adoption by a loving new family. All under the watchful eye of their caretaker, Isabella, who they just call Mom. One day, when the 6-year-old Connie gets adopted and picked up by her new family, she forgets her favorite stuffed rabbit at the orphanage. So Emma and Norman rush after her to return little Bunny. To do that, they break one of the few simple rules of Grace Fields' house. Don't cross the gate to the outside world. What they find on the other side of that gate is more horrifying than their worst nightmares come to life. From that moment on, the three children start forming a plan to run away from the place all of them called home up to this point. But time is running out, because the person that they once called mother is already on their tail. So, if that introduction to the story setup for The Promised Neverland, the newest Shonen Jump hit series, already gave you slight goosebumps, believe me, you haven't seen anything yet. Because unlike most other mega hit series Shonen Jump is known for, like One Piece, Dragon Ball, Naruto, Bleach, or Hunter x Hunter, for example, to name only a few, this is not a straightforward action show. This is a thrilling, suspense-driven horror series. From the first episode onwards, our main protagonists are thrown into an intense cat and mouse game with their caretakers. Caretakers put in quotes here. Mm-hmm. And without giving too much away, the stakes are incredibly high. So, the manga of The Promised Neverland started in 2016, written by Kayu Shirai and illustrated by Posca Demizu. It has at this point accumulated 13 volumes and is of course still running. There is also a comedic spin-off manga, which given the subject matter of the original, I can't even imagine what that is about. The first season of the anime has 12 episodes and is produced by Cloverworks, a branch studio of A1, which had me a bit worried because I wanted this show to look good. I was very, very excited for it. Hearing about when people were talking about what is hot right now in Shonen Jump, what's the next big thing, and it sounded like The Promised Neverland was one of the most interesting things there.
Yeah, I mean, when I saw Cloverworks attached to this, especially when the last thing they worked on was Persona 5, I gotta admit, I was a little worried for you.
Yeah, up to that point, I was only familiar with pretty much one show they produced, and that was Ace Attorney, like the anime adaptation of that, which looks like total hideous garbage. And like you said, they also produced the Persona 5 anime, which apparently looked really bad as well. I had only seen the first episode, I think, and then decided to drop it because I didn't want to subject myself to that. But yeah, they also did Fairy Tail's third season and Rascal Does Not Dream of Bunny Girl Senpai, of which at least the latter seemed to look solid, from what I could tell from the clips I've seen.
Yeah, I heard that was a good and a good-looking show, so...
Yes, I've heard many positive things about that show, which, given the name and, you know,
yeah,
that the girl is running around in a Playboy bunny suit, I didn't expect, but apparently that's a good show.
Yeah, I mean, I see that name and I'm just sort of like, I don't know, man.
Yeah,
but maybe someday.
But they also did some of the animation production on Darling in the Franxx, which, all right, you know how I feel about the story of that show, but it definitely looked good, so there's that. Although it's a bit hard to parse how much they did and how much Trigger in terms of animation production. So the director is Mamoru Kanbei, who also didn't really inspire that much confidence for the show in me, because his most prominent directional work is probably Elfen Lied, which, you know, decent looking show, I guess. It's been a long time since I've seen that thing, but aside from that, it's pretty shit, if I remember correctly, just story-wise. But yeah, he also worked as a storyboarder and episode director on Baccano, so there's that. But yeah, he also did some storyboards for Promised Neverland as well, so yeah. Putting the work in, but yeah, not necessarily the most positive first impression when it comes to staff. But guess what, John? It doesn't mean a damn thing! Because they hit it out of the fucking park. Promised Neverland is a fantastic looking show with great animation from beginning to end. Incredibly expressive and sympathetic characters, fantastic pacing, and a plethora of truly thrilling moments and plot twists. Shows you that studio names don't have to mean anything. I mean, that's true, but when you have certain associations with names, it's hard to break them. I mean, I assume the budget for this was maybe a bit higher than for something like Ace Attorney, but they definitely pulled together some very capable people for this, you know, in the actual animation department to turn this into a stellar production, which they did not do for something like Ace Attorney or Persona 5, the animation. I think But yeah, for example, like they got people like Asami Komatsu, who was chief animation director for Magi, The Seven Deadly Sins, and Grand Blue Fantasy. Also animation director for Final Fantasy XV Brotherhood. Did key animation for Hajime no Ippo's second and third season and The Melancholy of Haruhi Suzumiya. So that's quite a credit, a line of credits. They got Shigeme Ikeda and Yukiko Maruyama from Atelier Musa, who did the stellar art direction for the show and have worked on so much stuff, like art direction in Inuyasha, Macross Delta, a ridiculous amount of Gundam, My Hero Academia, One Punch Man, Overlord, to name only a few. The soundtrack by Takahiro Obata is also great. He seems to be kind of a newbie, at least when it comes to anime soundtracks, but he did the music for Cinderella 9 and helped out with the My Hero Academia movie and One Piece Gold movie. The OP by Overworld is also a real banger and already one of my favorite anime opening songs and openings from this year. So yeah, this is one of those cases where the right people for the job worked on the right things and created magic. Sumire Morohoshi also really does her best to make Emma one of the most instantly sympathetic characters you just need to root for. She was also the voice actress for Nina Tucker in Full Metal Alchemist Brotherhood and Marlene in Final Fantasy VII Advent Children. So she is definitely familiar with playing a young female character put into a horrible situation. But she was also Yachi in Haikyuu, so there's that. Much more lighthearted. Maya Uchida as Norman and Maria Ise as Rei are also great. So yeah, production-wise, there is nothing to complain about in this show, in my opinion. And guess what? Neither is there in the story department, really. Now, I'm going to tread lightly here in terms of spoilers and overall plot details, because this is the first season. I will definitely go into more depths and spoilers once the second season rolls around, but until then, I'd like for people who haven't checked out the show yet to experience some of the plot twists and surprises for themselves. And I definitely don't want to take away from the incredibly dense atmosphere of constant dread the show is so good at building up. Because if you know certain things and certain developments, that dread kind of evaporates because you know what happens to the characters and stuff like that. So I don't want to give that away. So I'm not going to talk about that too much. Also, I'm still hoping that John will give the show a chance until its second season airs in 2020. So there's that. Don't
worry, I was getting harassed by one of the guys I work with to watch the show too. So
very good. You got good coworkers with great taste. But yeah, don't expect me to go too much into the story developments in this review. I'm just going to talk a bit about what I liked and the one thing that I was not too keen on. Yeah, so first thing I liked, like I mentioned before, is the atmosphere, which is incredibly well built up in this show. Like from very moody hallways and great camera perspectives. There are some moments in the show where you're just on the edge of there are so many moments in the show where you're on the edge of your seat because you just want to peek around the corner and you can't, and you're afraid there is something there. And a lot of scenes that are, let's say, very dark scene, but that are very, very well lit and then create this very intimate and claustrophobic atmosphere. And yeah, you got these slow pans through corridors, which is done with a combination of traditional animation and CG. Like the characters are traditionally animated and slowly walk through the corridors, but the corridors are CG. So you got this super fluid tracking shot basically through the corridors and the characters walking through it super fluidly. And it's like this incredibly slow tracking shot. The characters just walking through to some point, and you're just trembling with anticipation what is gonna happen, and the sound design of the slow steps and absolute silence around these characters, and you just got this echo from their steps in the hallways, and it's presented so well, and it builds up this incredible dance atmosphere, and it's creepy and it's thrilling, and it's really, really great. This is a really well-staged show when it comes to its suspense moments. I really liked it. A lot of people knew what they were doing in this. And yeah, like I mentioned before, the corridors are CG, so there's good CG in this. There's not a lot. It's mostly used for that. And aside from that, it's pretty much all traditional animation. Should maybe mention the CG director who is Yo Fukuda, who also worked on the CG animation for Outlaw Zero, Space Brothers, and Sword Art Online Ordinal Scale. So yeah, really good job. Really very sparely used CG, but in an incredibly effective way. Fantastic. Another way they build atmosphere is by often showing everything around the kids, because this is a show about small children. This is also kind of unusual because the characters we usually get in Shonen Jump stuff are maybe in middle, high school age. And most of the characters in this are either elementary school level or even younger. So this is immediately creates a very different setup to a lot of other shonen stuff, because the characters are incredibly young, they're very vulnerable, very innocent. A lot of the smaller kids are just running around the house playing, and there's a lot of laughter and hijinks going on. And then all around that, you got this incredible, dark, crazy shit happening. Or, it's not really happening, but you have it in the back of your head because you know what's going on here. And a lot of those kids don't. Emma, Norman, and Ray are pretty much the only ones who are in the know in the beginning of the show. And it makes a lot of the scenes happening, especially when it comes to the caretakers here, like Isabella and later Sister Krona, who is a caretaker that gets added to the cast in the second or third episode. Every time they interact with the kids, it becomes like this incredible, suspenseful and threatening atmosphere. It's like, because you don't know what they're gonna do. You don't know what's gonna happen to these kids. Like, it's really terrifying. It can be a really terrifying show. And the way they emphasize this stuff is by showing a lot of the scenery around the kids like being unnaturally huge. Like, there's a scene in the first episode, just before one of the big reveals, where Norman and Emma go past these doors in a hallway. And these doors are just these looming giant arcs. And the kids and Norman and Emma look so small compared to that. And you got this slow pan them walking past these arcs, these doors. And they feel so small and insignificant and vulnerable, and it's just a great way of showing that they are outmatched and in incredible danger for most of the story. And I love that the show is so good at emphasizing that visually, not only showing that through the plot and what's happening, but also through its visual language. Promised Neverland is fantastic at that, just in general, creating this really threatening, dense atmosphere that makes you fear for the kids' safety at every step of the series. And yeah, really fantastic job. It's not like the show is, I said it's very threatening and horrifying, but it's not like this is a gore fest or something. Like I said, it's mostly suspense driven. And a lot of the implications that are in this show or made in this show are what's horrifying more than actually what's shown on screen. And I also like that. Like, the show is not trying to indulge in a gore fest or something, or make it like this snuff thing where it's like, oh, let's do horrible things to these kids or stuff like that. No, that's not what's happening. That's like, it's just this constant looming danger over the kids' heads, and you don't know if there is a trap that might snap at any moment. And that's really effective, and it's not gross or anything or off-putting. It's just thrilling. It's just really good suspense, and I appreciated that. And I didn't expect that from that show. I expected it to be more violent or something in that regard, because more action heavy, which it is not. And the good thing about it not being action heavy, there's I don't know, there's maybe like 1 or 2 action scenes in this show, maybe 3, or that would count as an action scene. Maybe, but it's not a fight or anything, it's a different kind of action. So you don't really put much animation effort into heavily choreographed action scenes or fight or anything, which usually is something that you would need for a Shonen Jump show, right? So most of the animation work in this goes into the character animation, the facial animation, the animation of their expressions and everything, the details, the hand gestures, the like I said, the facial gestures, the looks the characters have, the different changing moods on their faces and everything. And that's also pulled off really well. Like, in terms of expressing emotions, this is an aces show. Like, you immediately, when you see the characters, you know what's happening inside of them, because the animation does such a good job of putting their emotions on their face. And yeah, fantastic job in terms of animation. I would never have guessed that Cloverworks is fucking capable of this, but they are. And I couldn't be happier to be surprised in that way. The show is also really good at world building, like giving us, every episode we get like these small tidbits that clue us in on what's happening in this, like in this story or in this universe the story is set in, and how it's built up and what its rules are and what might be, might be going on in the background, and what might be some of the secrets that are that we still haven't discovered yet. It's like slowly feeding us bits of information that make it more and more interesting, and that makes you take guesses, and some of those pay off, some of them don't. You might be right with some of them and wrong with some others, and there's still surprises happening on the way. Like, I guess some of those things right, but some of those revelations caught me completely by surprise. And yeah, I also really enjoyed this. This show is kind of a mystery box, while being like a detective thing, a mystery thriller, a detective show, a procedural a bit, and a horror movie. That too, definitely that too. And it's good. It's great. They also manage to make really mundane things really scary sometimes, which I also appreciated. Like, at some point, Emma, Norman, and Ray decide that the best way to train the other kids to escape from the orphanage is through a game of tag. Like, they play tag with them and teach them how to evade their pursuers, because eventually they think that's what's going to happen once they escape, right? The people are going to be after them. So they need to learn how to react to it. Especially the small kids need to learn how to react to that and how to act. So that's their plan. That's how they do it. It's like, okay, we're gonna mask this as a normal play of tag, so that the caretakers, that Isabella and Sister Chrono, don't get suspicious. And that's how we teach those other kids how to escape from the orphanage. And then Sister Chrono joins the fun. And she's this looming, big, powerful black woman, like very much in contrast to Isabella, who has this very cold, hard, stone cold killer face, which seems they paint us kind of loving in the beginning and friendly, but once the jig is up, which is not much of a spoiler because it's in the first episode, and I won't exactly tell you what's happening, but she's definitely one of the bad guys. Sister Kronos is one too. And like I said, Isabella is very much the cold, calculating kind, which, with a plan in the background. And Sister Chrono is like this powerful physical force. So she joins the game of tag, and it's basically just a normal game of tag. And she is just, catching one kid after another. But the way they stage that, and with you knowing what's really going on, it becomes this incredibly terrifying thing where it's like, because you realize that those kids don't have a fucking chance, because she's at her physical peak, she's incredibly fast, she's incredibly smart, she can guess a lot of the stuff that the kids do and how they hide and where they run and everything. And, she catches up to them and is like, haha, I caught you. And hugs them, and the other kids laugh because they don't know what's going on. But Emma and Norman and Ray just stand there in the distance and have those terrifying looks on their faces because they know that they're fucking doomed because she's just such a powerful force. And that's amazing. Like, you have this simple thing in there, this game of tag, and it's like, which should be incredibly fun and goofy, and they managed to make that terrifying, where the characters realize that they are in a way outmatched, and they have to be smarter and better to outthink and outplay their opponents. And the show has several of those moments. And I loved it. Again, fantastically staged, fantastically well realized. I think this is one of the smartest shows I've seen in a while, just in terms of how it sets up its character relations and how it lets those characters play against each other. Each faction pushes itself to new heights. I love it. I think it's incredibly well realized. The only thing that didn't quite work for me is Sister Krona's characterization, because, like I said, Isabella is like this cold-hearted, dangerous, calculating, psycho killer person. I'm exaggerating a bit, or maybe I'm not, but just in terms of demeanor. Like, you see her and you are scared shitless because you don't know what's going on in her head. She is not a woman of many words, and when she is, she's terrifying. And aside from that, she always keeps you guessing. Does she know what's going on? Doesn't she? Does she have a plan on her own? Has she calculated that what's happening already into her plans? Stuff like that. Sister Krona's very, very forward. She's very loud. She's very brash. There are scenes where she talks to this weird puppet that she brought with her in her room, just basically telling that puppet what she plans to do, like a crazy person. They are very much going for Joker personality, like from Batman the Animated Series or stuff like that. The problem is they don't quite pull it off, except for a few scenes, because she's so fucking over the top that she becomes funny. And I know that's what they were trying to do. Like I said, she's kind of a Joker character who's also a funny character. But sometimes her incredibly funny and weird demeanor diffuses some of the build-up atmosphere in the show, like the dance atmosphere, because when she gets super over the top and starts dancing around and spinning like on her heels and something like that, and being like a weird-ass demonic fucking Mary Poppins, that might work for some people, but it's a bit, I don't want to say too anime, but it's a bit too weird and out there to be taken seriously. And that's why Isabella worked much better for me as a villain, because she is like she's this very serious threat. And Sister Krona comes, like I said, in the fucking game of tag. She is like this very dangerous and terrifying force, and then you got these moments where she's like just being this weird Joker person, and who is also not as smart as Isabella. She is pretty smart, but not as smart. And you feel like, okay, she's, I don't know. She feels like, she definitely feels like kind of the James Bond henchman, the sub-villain, who can be outmatched at some point. And sometimes that just diffuses the great atmosphere the show built. It doesn't happen too often, but sometimes, and that was a bit, I felt like if they handled her a bit more carefully and let her weirder things shine through not that much, like her weirder side shine through not that much, and didn't like make it so over the top, that would have worked a bit better. But that really is the only thing I did not love about this show. Everything else is fantastic. Everything is great. Like I said, there are so many great plot twists and surprises in there. I don't want to give anything away. I could go into details more, but I think I've already said enough already with, saying that Isabella and Sister Krona are the villains, even though that gets revealed in the first episode. But still, it's like, I don't want to give anything more away, because this is a very plot-driven show. It's also character-driven. The characters are fantastic. Emma, Norman, Ray, all are great. Isabella is great. She is a fantastic villain. It's so easy to hate her, and those are the best villains that are characterized so well that you understand them, but you still hate their fucking guts. Like, you hate them with a passion, and she's one of those. So many of the other kids are great too. There's so many characters, great characters, and all of them have a lot of potential to be very well developed in the future. This first season very much concentrates on Emma, Norman, and Ray, but they also already set up a lot of the younger kids for interesting future developments. And that's cool. I'm really looking forward to seeing where this is going. Yeah, I loved this first season of The Promised Neverland. It's a fantastic thriller. It has a riveting plot with a lot of mind games and surprises, some really shocking scenes, a fantastic cast, amazing production values, and the best thing, I have no idea where the story is going from here. The first season ends at a perfect spot, all the cards are reshuffled, and I can't wait to see where the story goes in season 2. I'm already on the edge of my seat, just like I was on every episode of this first season. I think in the US it streams on pretty much everything. Crunchyroll, Funimation, Hulu, High Dive, you name it. Over here in Germany it's on Wakanim, who also seem to have a pretty good back catalog if you're searching for a legal alternative to Crunchyroll over here. Anyway, I urge you to check this show out. It's not the classic shonen battle action you might be expecting from, Shonen Jump stuff. It's more in the vein of Death Note. But it's a super enthralling series that pulls you in and never lets go. If you're in the mood for a true nail-biter, this is it, folks. Get on it. And that is a wrap on the 75th episode of Anime Brain Freeze. All the music in our show is from the Double Dragon Neon soundtrack by the amazing Jake Kaufman. Please go to vrt.bandcamp.com and check out his awesome work. Our show is available on most of the popular podcast services, but it's always worth visiting animebrainfreeze.com for our review index and some interesting articles linked in our episode release posts. Leave us comments and questions on YouTube, follow us on Twitter at AnyBrainFreeze, or send an email to animebrainfreeze@gmail.com. We would love to read your feedback. Thanks for tuning in, we hope you had a good time, and please join us again on our next episode. Macht's gut!
See you again, everybody.
Next time on the season finale of Anime Brain Freeze.
It's time to go down the rabbit hole and through the looking glass once again into my own personal Stockholm syndrome. I mean Wonderland.